stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now.
Thanks, Jerry, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the studio headquarters of Chicagoland's most watched, most talked about Access television series. I'm Samantha Bentley, and this is the 1152nd edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Today, we continue with our 2009 motorcycle road trip. If you'll recall, last week, Bill and Mae left Chicago area on his Suzuki GSX1100G and headed south on 294. They took it to 8094 East towards Indiana. When they reached 394, it was just before the Indiana border. They turned south to get them to Route 30, where they headed east again so they could stop and eat in Crown Point, Indiana. After that, it was south on I-65 to Remington, Indiana, where they spent the night. And in the morning, were quite by accident treated to an antique car rally, including a ride in a Stanley steamer. Then it was on the road again on I-65 through Indianapolis and on to Scottsburg, Indiana, where they bailed off the interstate and took 56 to Madison to get on 421 South in Kentucky. This is the road they so enjoyed last year, they made it a special effort to use it again. Let's rejoin them where they left off last week, headed south on 421 in Kentucky. Where are they going? Bill hasn't revealed it yet.
421 in Kentucky, from the Indiana border to the state capital of Frankfort, is about as pretty a ride as you'll find anywhere. The road traverses lovely rolling hills and is continually curving right and left, a biker's paradise. Now, if you'll recall, last week when we left you, we were concerned about finding fuel. If you'll notice the instruments on my bike, the gas gauge is in the middle. It's very accurate, and when the needle is to the right, the tank is full. When it's to the left, it's empty. When you see me looking down, I'm checking the fuel gauge. One of the nice things about roads like 421 is the beautiful countryside is punctuated by small towns every 50 or 60 miles. You really have to pay attention to how much fuel you have remaining as you pass through these towns. I'm comfortable on my bike with a full load of fuel for about 150 miles. After that, I'm not sure. I usually guess the little towns will pop up every 50 or 60 miles, so if I've gone more than 100 miles and encounter a gas station, I usually fill up. On the other hand, just because I think the towns occur every 50 or 60 miles doesn't mean there's any guarantee. I pointed out last week that in order to enjoy this helmet cam footage, you have to use your imagination. Television only provides pictures and audio. It doesn't have a provision that allows you to feel the ride, or for that matter, feel my concern about fuel. When I produce these motorcycle road trips, I'm always faced with the problem of how to present them. Just running helmet cam footage for an hour is pretty boring because all you can sense while watching on television is the sights and sounds. Yet there is so much more to it. The joy of riding a motorcycle is about feel more than anything else. A motorcycle doesn't fight with nature or insulate you from it. In fact, it immerses you in your environment. Riding a motorcycle stimulates all of your senses. It's not just something you see and hear. It's something you also feel, taste, smell. Yet television is limited to sights and sounds. Unless I can persuade you to use your imagination. As we roll through this gorgeous country, try to imagine what it might smell like, or even what you might be tasting. Try to feel what the warm sun on your exposed skin might be like. And don't forget about nature's most pervasive, omnipresent force, gravity. A motorcycle works with gravity. Try to feel the gravitational pull as we take you left and right and up and down. It's part of the delight of riding. Everything you need to enjoy this footage is locked inside your head. The helmet cam is positioned in such a way that you're like a passenger. Don't cheat yourself out of the experience. This may be your only opportunity to be on a motorcycle cruising the Kentucky hills. Use your imagination and enjoy it. you might want to think about that fuel problem in the back of your mind too while you're enjoying. That's part of it. Of course, if we were network television, we would provide you with a variety of shots to enhance this footage. It would be nice to intersperse passing shots. You know, a shot of Mae and I on the bike cresting a hill or going over a bridge. Better yet, how about a couple of helicopter shots following us over the countryside? It would be nice, but we don't have those kind of resources or anything close to it. Passing shots would require a chase vehicle and another cameraman, and helicopter shots would require, well, a helicopter. On the other hand, if we had all that stuff, I think we'd lose the intimacy of this experience. Right now, it's just you, me, and Mae riding along on our motorcycle. And you know, that's not bad either. Again, use your imagination for those shots. Sure hope we find a gas station pretty soon. There must be a gas station around here someplace. This is one of those little towns I was talking about. Whenever you have a concentration of people, you have to have a fuel supply. I'm positive I don't have enough fuel to get to the next town. Okay, I can't resist. That's the only way somebody's gonna pass me when I'm out of fuel. Sorry, folks. Sometimes my instincts from my younger days pop out. The joy of a motorcycle road trip has nothing to do with passing, guys. Sorry about that.
Gee, it looks like they found a gas station just in time. Hi, I'm Janine Lauschat, and I must admit the limited fuel capacity of motorcycles hadn't occurred to me. On the one hand, they don't use much fuel. On the other, they can't carry much. Bill said it isn't a big deal because after 150 miles in the saddle, you really need to stretch your legs anyway. Speaking of stretching your legs, it looks like he and Mae found just the right place. After filling up, he pulled the bike off to the side and took a moment to chat.
Well, Mae and I have been on the road for quite a while now. We're in Newcastle, right? Newcastle, Kentucky.
Right, not Indiana.
No, not Indiana, Newcastle, Kentucky. We're on 421. Of course, by now you've seen, I hope, quite a good piece of 421. And I never quite know where to tape there because I'll tape for a while and then I'll say, okay, well, that's enough, and I'll put it away. And 10 minutes later, I'm in an area that's even prettier. And so I turn the tape thing back on again and I get a little bit of that and I say, well, that's enough. And I turn it off. And then 10 minutes later, I got to get some of this. So I don't know how much I've shown you and everything, but all I can tell you is if you're a motorcyclist, or for that matter, street rods, stuff like that. 421 from Madison, Indiana. That's on the right on the border of Indiana and Kentucky. The capital of Kentucky, is it Frankfort or Franklin?
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. Okay, from Madison, Indiana to Frankfort, Kentucky. It's about 2.5, 3 hours of the most beautiful winding roads through the country that you've ever seen. As a matter of fact, we're stopped right now at a place that it gives me a little nostalgia because it reminds me, not the same, but a little bit like what my parents had, if you remember the discussions we had on Route 20 in upstate New York. Oh boy, 50 years ago, something like that. This place I thought was just a gas station when we pulled in, but there's a teenager behind the grill there. They make hamburgers and things like that, and it just had that feeling of my parents with their place on the road. Theirs was more of a restaurant, it didn't have a gas station, but it kind of had that same small town feel. Not a McDonald's, not a Wendy's, nothing like that. Kind of a home cooking kind of thing. Very, very cool, very pleasant. Takes me back a ways. Now, Mae, I have not even mentioned your shoes.
I have brand new shoes on.
May, these are the same dopey things you had last
No,
year.
these are
You mean you
brand
bought the
new.
same kind again?
Yes.
You-
I had 2 pairs of these.
You're not embarrassed of them at all.
No,
You like them.
they're comfortable.
She likes them. She's only kidding. Anyhow, are you having a good time so far?
Yes, I am.
Okay. What did you think of those brass cars this morning?
Very nice.
You
and
actually got a
I'll
ride.
remember. I got a ride, of course.
In a steamer.
Yes, a Stanley steamer.
Yeah, wasn't that cool?
Yes.
Very dead silent, smooth. That's a technology that really needs to be revisited again. Anyway, we're going to get on the road and we're going to continue south. You know what? I want to talk just a little bit before we go, because sometimes on the road they don't hear me as well and everything. One of the things that we're doing on this trip, how can I do this? Maybe I should do it partially on voiceover. Let me just explain this a little bit. When I started putting together this effort on my part to try to do something with what I call the motorsport dilemma, meaning, well, the need to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. Many years ago, I put together a brochure that I really felt needed to be printed in color and to try to get this thing off the ground and get the public interested in what we were doing. And I was looking for a way to get them printed, and I didn't have any money, and I wanted it done in full color, and I knew full color printing was expensive. This was long before there were computers or any of the rest of it where you can kind of knock them out yourself. You really needed the big 4-color presses and all that. And I was pondering. I'd been to a couple of print shops. It was way out of my price range. So I'm working in the garage one night and I hear an advertisement for a company called Corvette Printing. And I said, Corvette Printing. They said full color printing. I said, gee, I wonder if the guy's a car guy. Now, it could be a Corvette ship too, the reference, but I said, there's a chance. I took down the phone number. So the next day I went looking for this Corvette Printing and I found it in Chicago on Diversity Avenue. And I took one look at this place. Oh no, this isn't going anywhere. This place looks like General Motors. This isn't going to go anywhere. This place is huge. And I went in there. I wanted to talk to the owner, and there was a fellow named Pat Gelso, and he very nicely accommodated me. He was a man about my age, and we sat down. We're talking about at least 20 years ago now. And we sat down and I talked about the whole motorsport thing and the lack of television attention and all the rest of it. This was long before I was doing the television program. And what I had in mind, and he listened to what I had to say very patiently, and he finally said, Bill, I agree with everything you say, but there's not a chance in heck that you can do it. But I'll print the brochures. You have to pay for the materials, but I'll print the brochures. Well, a couple of funny things about it. I was so happy. I said to myself on the way out, my God, I can't believe it. I talked this big-time outfit into printing these brochures for me, and all I've got to do is pay for the material. Well, I didn't know. Do you have any idea what the material is involved in the cost of color printing?
Mucho.
Yeah, it's about half the cost. I couldn't believe it. Paper. What could paper cost? Well, it's about half the cost of the printing, so it ended up costing me about $1,000, but it's certainly a lot better than $2,000, that's for sure. And in the process, I'd made a friend, and I got to know Pat over the years, and we became very good friends, and he's a good guy. His print shop eventually grew, and he merged it with another shop to become Lithcor Printing, which was about twice as big as the original Corvette Printing. Big operation, had his own airplane, very successful guy, and all he ever wanted to do was move to Florida. So about 10 years ago or so, he closed down his operation, retired, sort of retired. I don't think Pat will ever really retire, but sort of retired to Boca Raton, and it is enjoying life down there, and I haven't seen him in about 10 years. We still communicate frequently by internet, email, and all that, and a couple of times a year by telephone. Anyhow, didn't know. Somewhere along the line, I started talking about the motorcycle road trips I was doing on the show and all that. And he mentioned he'd had a motorcycle when he was younger. Didn't realize the fact that he had quite a few of them apparently, and was basically a Triumph Bonneville guy. And in fact had purchased an old 59 Triumph Bonneville to have down in Florida. I started telling him about the G and all, the Suzuki GSX1100G, and he got sort of interested in it. And after a while he said to me, Bill, if you run into any of those that's for sale, kind of pass it along to me. I might be interested in looking at something like that. Long story short, one of the guys on the forum that we participate with had one for sale, and Pat, also in addition to his Boca Raton thing, he's got a cabin in Tennessee, and this bike happened to be in Tennessee, so he went up and picked the thing up. Well, you know what, I'll pick the story up from there a little longer. It's an interesting story, and I don't want to spend the whole time right now on it. We want to get back on the road, but for right now, let's just say that one of the things that's going to be part of this trip is I'm going to get to see my old friend Pat Gelso again after about 10 years, so this is pretty cool. This is pretty special to me.
I don't know why Bill teases me about my shoes. I like them. Hi, I'm Mae Chin. We noticed the sky was starting to cloud up again toward the north, so we loaded up to continue south. The weather had been weird since we left Chicago. Right now it was hot and sunny, but as we had been experiencing for the entire trip, it might rain like crazy any minute.
We're back on 421 headed south in Kentucky, just leaving that Newcastle, Kentucky gas station slash cafe slash grill slash gas station, I guess. Pretty cool though, very reminiscent of the rural area and brings back fond memories. Speaking of fond memories, I want you to enjoy a little more of this 421.
So jealous. It looks like such a lovely ride. And they have plenty of gas now. I don't care for the idea of running out of gas. I really don't know what they would do if they ran out. Anyway, they continued south on 421. When they got to Frankfort, Kentucky's capital, they had to decide how to proceed south. They could avoid the interstate by taking 127 south, then 150 until they got to Mount Vernon, where they felt they had to get on I-75. Or they could take the interstate and try to stay ahead of the weather, which seemed to be catching them. They decided to jump on Interstate I-64 and save the other route for the return home. Right now, they need to put some distance between themselves and the closing weather. After skirting Lexington, Kentucky, they got on I-75 and laid their ears back and let the big G consume concrete. In a couple of hours, the weather caught them and darkness closed in. They found a motel in Mount Vernon and crashed for the night. The next morning, the weather didn't look promising.
Good morning, folks. We are in Mount Vernon, Kentucky. Decided to stop last night because it got pretty dark. In fact, real dark on the interstate. And as I've already explained, you really can't see anything at night. And part of the reason you go on a motorcycle road trip is to enjoy the scenery. We have been in and out of rain for the past, I guess it's 2 days now, day and a half, whatever. How long we have been in and out of the rain, and then occasionally brilliant sun and sauna, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially in Kentucky.
Especially, and matter of fact, it was funny that 421 that I'm so enchanted with because it's like 2.5 to 3 hours of just rights and lefts and ups and downs and all that. May, you were ready to get off of it and get on the interstate.
Yeah, it got too winding for me.
You were dizzy.
Yep.
It's funny. That was a delight to a biker, and she says, fine, let's go straight and level for a while. So we got back on the interstate. Anyhow, we're going to continue on. May, we're way behind. Do you know that?
Yes.
How come?
You.
Because we started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the first day when we should have been leaving there like at noon, right?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to make it there today, though. And by the way, I suppose we can kind of give it away where we're going now. What do you think? Yeah.
It's up to you.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and give it away. We're going to Sweetwater, Tennessee. Haven't been in the Tennessee area before. If you'll remember last year when we did the rally for these motorcycles, there's a group on the internet, the GSX1100G forum for people that own these motorcycles, and we took them, right, May, last year. Am I going to get a smile out of you today? There we go. Come on. Come on. Let me see. I'll tell you what, we have been so wet and cold. It's cold this morning, right?
Not too bad.
Well, we got coats on.
I know, but it's not as cold as yesterday.
Okay. In any event, as I told the story about my friend Pat Gelso and everything, he ended up buying one of these Gs, and we're going to talk about that because hopefully I'll be seeing him shortly, the first time in 10 years, and we're going to talk about the G and everything. But anyway, this G Rally, as they planned it this year, all of a sudden it was in Tennessee, and Pat's got even though he lives in Boca Raton, Florida, he's got a cabin in Tennessee. He says, Bill, they're having that rally, and normally I wouldn't take you the road trip, the same place 2 years in a row, but I thought it was an interesting sidebar here with seeing my old friend and all that, and it's in a different location. Last year was in Slade, Kentucky. This year it's in Sweetwater, Tennessee. So anyway, we're on the way to Sweetwater, Tennessee. Going to hook up with my friend Pat because he got the same kind of a bike that I've got, and I want to get his reaction to it. I can tell you this: after he got it, and he got it home down, took it home to Florida in a trailer and all that, he called me on the phone and just said, "Yikes!" It was way more motorcycle than he expected. So I'm looking forward. This is time for us to get on the road. As always, I can't get going. It's already almost what, May? It's almost 11 o'clock. It's 10:30 already. I can't seem to go. I'm not a morning person.
Morning person or not, if we were going to get to Sweetwater, Tennessee today, it was time to hit the road.
Ready? Well, we are leaving Mount Vernon, Kentucky, that is. As a matter of fact, as I look down, if you can see it, just about there, not out of gas, but we're pretty low. So I think before I get on the interstate, it's kind of a pretty place. Couldn't see it well in the rain and dark last night. Before I get on the interstate, I think maybe I better get a little gas. See what's the most convenient. Oh, how much more convenient can this be? Can't believe this thing sat in the rain all night and started right up like it was nothing. Apparently they didn't take lessons from the British on building these things.
After filling up with fuel and checking the maps, we were ready to roll.
All right, we're full of fuel. Looks like it's actually starting to brighten up a little bit today. I can't believe it. But it's probably a trick. We've been through this before for the last couple of days. Sun comes out long enough to tease you. Oh, I didn't realize it was that close. 75 south, here we are. There we are. Easier than I thought it was. Things look different at night when it's cold and dark and raining. Now I'm comfortable on this bike to about 150 miles. I always zero the trip counter after I fill up with fuel. I checked it in the room last night. It looked like we're about 130 miles away. So this tank of fuel should get me all the way there if I'm even halfway close. admit, this is one of those times I wish we were network television. Wouldn't it be cool if we had helicopter shots of Mae and I going through these beautiful rock formation mountains? On the other hand, we'd lose the intimacy the way we do it. And if you use your imagination, you can just about see those helicopter shots. Remember what I said earlier, your imagination will be the key to enjoying this footage. Try to imagine yourself on the bike and put yourself in the scene.
Bill's mileage estimate was just a little off. As it turned out, Sweetwater, Tennessee was about 160 miles from Mount Vernon, Kentucky, not 130, necessitating a stop for fuel in Knoxville. He might have been able to make it, but didn't want to risk running out in the country. It took about 3 hours to get from Mount Vernon, Kentucky to Sweetwater, Tennessee, and they were pleased when they started seeing signs indicating they were approaching Sweetwater. Cool name, don't you think?
Sweetwater, 1 mile. Stupid swinging out past the truck when I had to get on the exit, but I really wanted the audience to see the Sweetwater exit. Anyway, okay, this is supposed to be it. This is supposed to be 60, and I'm looking for the hilltop. Hopefully I got off at the right exit. Hopefully I got off at the right one. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. It's supposed to be right near the exit. $60. Did you see anything that said 60? Well, it's possible I got off at the wrong exit. I got all excited when I saw the Sweetwater sign, but I wouldn't think they would have more than one exit. So, let's see if I can figure this thing out. Boy, what an adventure we've had through the Tennessee mountains, where Mae will explain it as fog, but it wasn't really fog. We were actually in the clouds. Very cool experience, very cool. Yeah, let's try going the other way on this road, and then I'll see if I get off the wrong one. See, it's called the hilltop something, and it looks like we go uphill here, so let's go uphill and see if it's up the hill. Certainly is pretty in here. But as I was saying, those Tennessee mountains, wow, I would love to see them in bright sunlight. We saw them in rain, and just was raining or just going to rain. Or for that matter, riding through the clouds. It's very cool. This is definitely a hilltop. Could there be a hilltop place up here? I'm starting to think I got off at the wrong exit. All right. The next choice is going to be, I'm going to stop and check the map, see if there's more than one exit. Called a hilltop anything. There's certainly plenty of hilltops. Alright, I'm going to check.
You must admit, it's always an adventure on Motorsports Unlimited, and we always take you along, even on the mistakes. Bill couldn't tell from the map he had if there were 2 exits for Sweetwater, so he wanted to ask at the restaurant we passed. It was such a pretty area, we didn't mind riding around trying to find our way.
Yeah, it's beautiful, huh? See the horse? Well, there's certainly plenty of hilltops here, and this place is called the Hilltop something. But I have a feeling I got off at the wrong exit. I saw that dinner bell restaurant when we first got off at this exit. Maybe I'll stop there and ask them. What we're looking for is exit 60. I saw Sweetwater and perhaps jumped the gun. Could be there's more than one exit for it. I wouldn't think so with a small town like that. Very small town, but in the meantime, we get a chance to look at some of the gorgeous countryside. It's beautiful. Really, really pretty. Just a shame that you've got to wear the helmet. It really is. Really a shame. I think it would be wise if all biker organizations got together and started making sure whatever plans they put together don't include helmets or states that have helmet laws, and start putting some economic pressures on these discriminatory laws. Yeah, here's where I think I'm going to stop and find out if I'm on the right track or not. Ah, there goes some G's right there. We've got to be in the neighborhood. There goes some motorcycles there, some Suzuki GSX1100Gs.
The Suzuki GSX1100G motorcycles Bill was referring to were the same as the machine he was riding, and the reason the gathering in Sweetwater was taking place. Suzuki only made them from 1991 to 1993, nearly 20 years ago. So it was unlikely they were just passing through. They must be part of the group, and they must be close. Sure enough, in the restaurant, he learned he did indeed get off at the wrong exit.
Well, I apparently did jump the gun. These nice folks in here said, nope, next exit. This is exit 62, and I want at exit 60. So, I have a feeling those two G's that we saw are just enjoying the absolutely beautiful countryside. So we'll try it again. Looks like a nice restaurant though, maybe we'll come back here later. Sweetwater. Maybe they do have two exits. Wow. Now the lady in that restaurant said make a left turn after I got off the exit. There it is, up there to the right, hilltop. Boy, that is a hilltop, wow. They weren't kidding. They weren't kidding. Yeah, this is really steep. Let's see, this must be the way to get in. Ah, look at that pretty horizon out there. Wow. Beautiful. This must be the place.
After checking in, we learned all the G-men were placed in the same area. Bill and I went to join them.
Yeah, let's see where we can find. See if we can find where everybody is. Ah, this must be the place. This must be the place. Must be the place. They got these guys down here with the oddball bikes. That means anything but a G. Down here, and I looked. I haven't seen Pat's bike yet, but for pictures, and that looks like his right down there on the end. So I'll pull up and see if I can find my friend. Yeah, that looks like his. Florida plates. That's got to be it. Okay, mate.
Of course, the first thing Bill did was look for his old friend, Pat Gelso. He actually wondered if he would recognize him. It's been 10 years. In a few moments, Pat came around the corner. He looked exactly the same, and the first thing Bill wanted to do was put him on camera.
Just like I guessed, the black bike with the Florida plates. It had to be my friend Pat Gelso. Pat, please tell the folks.
Don't forget to mention the plywood.
Oh, we're going to get to the plywood in a minute, buddy. Believe me, I wouldn't let you off. Tell the folks who you are.
Who am I?
Starts with Pat Gelso.
Pat Gelso. I'm from Chicago. Friend with Bill from longer ago than we care to talk about. And
I already told him the story.
He taught me to buy one of these things, and I love it, and I'm here.
It's actually a really funny story. Again, like I told you, I met Pat. He has this huge printing company. This just, yes, it was. It was like General Motors, and here I'm walking up with my hand out.
What they got.
Yeah, I walk up there with my hand out, and this poor guy listens to everything I have to say, and he says, "Bill, I agree with everything you say, but there's not a chance in hell that you can do it. But I'll print the brochures." So we got to be friends after that and got to know each other and all that sort of thing. He's also my biggest critic. He's the first person to call me up and say, "So, Bill, where's the Crusade?"
Yeah. Well, where is the Crusade? And where's that bike, by the way?
There you go. You're talking about the war bike now and all that. The problem is that Pat met me actually before I was doing a cable television series, and the focus of my attention was to try to get motorsports on television.
He had a real mission.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm telling you. He's one of my biggest
Now
critics.
He's got a job.
Anyhow, my objective was always that I know America communicates by television, and if you're not part of television, you're invisible in our culture. There's no question about it. And I was busy attacking, and those of you who've been watching this for a long time have seen some of those shows, attacking network television for their exclusion of motorsports and all the rest of it. And we're not going to spend all the time talking about that today. But Pat is the guy Pat is the guy that is like my conscience. He always comes back and reminds me. My problem with it is once all of a sudden this public access thing came along, do I want to spend all the time grousing about the fact that motorsport doesn't get that network television time? Or do I want to take advantage of this little ray of light that we've got to get our community on the air? Anyhow, Pat's the guy that stands there and reminds me, "Bill, it's supposed to be a fight." Am I right?
Yeah, some fight.
Yeah, some fight.
I told you it was hopeless.
This is a guy, like I say, almost as bright as me, almost as determined as me, certainly as opinionated as I am, and we love each other to death as long as we only see each other once every 10 years or so, about right?
Coming from him, all that's a compliment.
About once every 10 years we get along. Anyway, long story short, find out something I didn't know when he was back in Chicago, that he was a motorcycle guy, that when he was young, he had Triumphs and BSAs. I never knew any of that. We had kind of similar backgrounds, and I never knew it.
I never raced professionally like you did, but I broke plenty of bones.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that count?
It definitely counts. And I was surprised to find that. And then along comes, I find out that what is a 59 that you bought?
Actually, I got a 66 and a 73. And a basket case 69 that I'm probably not going to bother trying to put together.
Triumph Bonnevilles.
Yeah, they're all Bonnevilles.
All Triumph Bonnevilles, because that was kind of something from you remember fondly from your teenage years.
My first two bikes were BSAs, and then I decided I didn't like them, and I changed to Triumphs.
Went to Triumphs?
I know that breaks your heart. But
no, I very much like, I liked my BSA. Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
I liked my BSA a lot. But the point was when we came along and
they
Pat,
did shift 1 up, 3 down.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I can't believe I didn't remember that. Although there's a lot of stuff I don't remember anymore. Point being that Pat is not exactly a pro Japanese bike guy. And
Always hated him.
I had an entirely different opinion because I raced against him, and I knew how good these darn things were. And not just good, incredible power. I remember one of the first 250 Yamaha two-stroke that I got my hands on. I had something called a Git Kit, genuine Yamaha tuning parts, GYT, Git Kit. That thing was as fast as any 252 cycle out there, and better than that. The engine was bulletproof, he never hurt the transmission, and I developed real respect for them. So when these things came along and I ran into these things, I got into these things, Pat, this is a great bike. Surprisingly, and this is the stunning part if you knew Pat, this is the stunning part. After a few months of talking about this, I sent him pictures, and then he actually saw this G Rally from last year. I sent him the DVDs on it. He says, you know, if one of those comes for sale, kind of send me the info. So I started.
I'll try.
Yeah, so he said, I'll try. He went, and that's a lot for Pat. Trust me, he's as bad as I am in this stuff. And so I started feeding him when people had one for sale. I started feeding him, and sure enough, one shows up in Tennessee, and he's got a cabin. And he's from Boca Raton, but he's got a cabin in Tennessee. And he says, you know, I'm going to go and look at it. And so he goes, buys it, brings it back in a trailer. It's like 2 degrees, right?
Actually, I bought it sight unseen. I sent the guy a money order and told him I was going to come get it.
Right. And when you went to get it, it was 2 degrees.
It was cold. I was going to ride it back, but it was a little nippy.
Definitely a little bit nippy. He couldn't even start the thing up. So anyhow, he gets it back to Florida. He calls me, says, I got it back here. He says, I'm going to start working on it now and get it running. You better be right. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and you were right.
And
I always tell you you're right when you're right.
And a couple of hours later, he calls and he says, yikes.
Yeah. But it doesn't belong in the city. It's a road bike.
It's a road burner.
Yeah, it is.
It is smoke. In fact, you were telling me that you came from the other side of Tennessee to get here a couple hundred miles or 150 miles?
About 170 miles. Yeah.
170 miles through the rain for at least 90% of it?
Yep.
You never thought you'd be running 90 miles an hour through the rain?
Never happened on an old Triumph.
Boy, I don't think they'd run long enough.
Yeah,
you know?
probably not at 90.
Or the ignition would have gotten wet, and you'd be darn lucky to keep it.
Actually, the new electronic ignition is pretty good. I know that you're completely sold on these things, but the old Triumphs aren't dead yet. I do like it, and it runs good. It really does. I've never had any trouble with it. The electronic ignition was a godsend. I mean, trying to get those two sets of
Let
points
me remind you,
working.
folks,
Yes.
that every guy on the side of his road with his bike, the first thing he says, never had any trouble before. In any event, we're not going to get into that because I know how Pat is and I know how I am. Point being, these things are smoking fast, and
seem to be wonderfully dependable
and like
stable.
everybody else, you said the same thing. The most notable feature,
The torque, the power, just
awesome.
You just twist it and it just claws its way forward.
it's hard to believe.
Amazing.
It
really
is amazing power. So tell us what we've got here. Make your model.
This is a 93, although the only 3 years they made them, 91, 2, and 3, they all look exactly the same. So.
Identical machines. They made them in 3 different colors. They had a gunmetal gray kind of color that I think they called Academy Slate,
Oh, really? Yeah.
black, and the maroon.
Right. There's one gray one here, mostly maroon ones, and a couple of black ones, and a couple of custom paint jobs, which are pretty nice. There's a blue one. And
Well, I'll
and
tell
a
you
bright
something.
yellow one.
I cannot tell you how happy I am when he called and said I was right because I had my heart in my mouth because I'd already told him, Pat, at that price, if you don't like it, I'll buy it from you. And I'd had to find some money in order to do it.
I'll tell you, I don't know what made him sell it, but I'm glad he did.
Oh, absolutely. Well, listen, once again, it's good to see you, my old friend. We're going to spend a little time here together. I wanted to get him on camera right away before we got started here. And
Or I had too many beers.
or had too many beers, which is always a problem at bike meets, of course. Anyhow, we are now in Sweetwater, Tennessee. Beautiful. What do you think of the country around
I
here?
made it halfway up, what do they call that? Chirahala Skyway this morning. It got a little cold and wet because it's still raining up there, but boy, is that beautiful. Unbelievable.
We were
It's just
riding
fantastic.
when we came into Tennessee out of Kentucky. Apparently, you hit a ridge of mountains, and we could see that the ceiling looked like it was only a couple hundred feet because
get
you
up-
couldn't see the top of the mountains.
Yeah.
And we rode up into the mountains, into those clouds, and it was like being in London. How breathtaking and cold, yeah, and wet. By the way, it wasn't
and
raining,
wet.
and we were
Yeah,
getting
just
wet.
right?
Yeah, just got
I
wet.
just did the same thing. I passed a marker that said 3,300 feet, and I was in the cloud. Yeah, and I turned around. I wasn't in the mood. I didn't have any gloves. I was cold. But boy, it was beautiful.
It was absolutely, and the funny, we were just talking about it. The thing about a motorcycle road trip, and I do this show for the general public, and I try to help you understand the motorsport community. And a motorcycle road trip is unlike any other kind of road trip. It is a unique kind of pleasure, and we were just talking about that. For all we've been through, poor May and I have been wet and dry and wet and dry and wet and dry and wet and dry day after day, coming down here, and yet, for some reason, there's some kind of a pleasure in having accomplished it. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's still pretty
your
cool.
Viewpoint. The ride is fun. I would prefer not to be wet, and I don't really get a feeling of accomplishment.
So
I feel like I got wet.
So you want the fair weather.
Yeah, I want the fair weather. That's why I moved to
That's why you
Florida.
moved to Florida. Anyhow,
I want it 85 and sunny.
my good I can't tell you how good it is to see this guy. My good friend Pat Gelsel.
Wouldn't be any fun if we didn't argue.
What a great trip! Despite the rain, there was plenty of fun riding. And reuniting with an old friend is absolutely the best. Unfortunately, as always, we're out of time too soon with only enough left to acknowledge the fine work of our award-winning production team, including Tom McGrady, Art Lauschat, our webmaster, Frank Barbalace, and Sue Casanda. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by independent artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited: Janine Lauschat, Mae Chin, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Samantha Bentley, eager to see what the rest of the G Rally is all about. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, it's the 2009 Suzuki GSX1100G Rally itself. Oh sure, for me, getting to see an old friend after so many years was more than enough event. But there was much more. Next week, we'll show you a little bit of it. All next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.